ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow anime enthusiasts. Welcome back. As you might be able to tell, I am very giddy and excited to relay my opinion on the current series we are going to be reviewing today. That being Made in Abyss. So, Made in Abyss, to give some context for some people, I've known about for a very long time, and this is one of the, I would say, few cases, even though my friends would argue with me, it's not that few, of the times where I've known a lot about a show, excuse me, but I've never actually watched it. I don't know what it was about Made in Abyss. Well, that's a lie. I kind of do know what it was about Made in Abyss that really attracted me to it. And one of the main things that I think kind of attracted me to Made in Abyss was how dark and fucked up it really is. Now, Made in Abyss is one of the shows where when you first initially look at it, similar to Madoka Magica, I would like to say, you look at it and you think it's going to be one way. Now, the obvious style and look of the show is very cutesy, it's very chibi, and I really like that stuff. No one is going to be surprised that actually knows me that I like cute, chibi stuff like that. Now, Made in Abyss, despite how it looks, is actually pretty fucking dark. There's a lot of fucked up shit, a lot of dark shit, and a lot of really tragic, messed up shit that happens in the show. So, this review is going to be for all of Season 1, all of Season 2, and the movie that happens in between. Because I binged everything. And I binged everything because Amazon introduced ads, so I had to get everything out of the way that was on Amazon. Made in Abyss being one of them. I didn't get to everything I wanted to get to on Amazon, but, it is what it is. We have limited amounts of time on this earth anyway. But, back to Made in Abyss. So, I've known for Made in Abyss for a long time for the pure fact that I saw clips on YouTube. I saw clips on YouTube, and one of the first things I saw about the series was Bondrewd. And we'll get into him hopefully later. But Bondrewd and what Bondrewd does basically introduced me that, wow, this show is really fucked up, it's really tragic. Now, do I think it's the worst shit that's ever happened in anime? Maybe not, especially since more stuff has come out that has tried to push the envelope to that extent. I haven't watched Chainsaw Man, but I think that one's pretty fucked up. Obviously, if you go to your friends and you're like, oh, which anime world would you rather live in? Attack on Titan, fucking, Tokyo Ghoul, all this shit. All this shit's pretty fucked up too, now that you look at it in, like, the grand context of things. But I think Made in Abyss was kind of either coming out at a time or kind of maybe just made good with the algorithm on maybe not as much fucked up shit was happening of this type. Because Made in Abyss is very, very directed at being fucked up. I'm gonna say that word like 100 fucking times at this point. But it really subverts your expectations. It does what I always count as, one of the main things that a lot of people know to subvert expectations, which is Invincible Episode 1. And obviously, for anime standards, Madoka Magica. You think it's going to be one way, but it's really another. And ironically enough, I saw Made in Abyss with one of my friends that didn't really know anything about it. And because he didn't know anything about it, he went into it thinking like, oh, I'm not going to like this. It looks like some kid stuff. But, I think I've thoroughly convinced him that it's not. Or even if it is, it does look very kiddish and stuff. It's very much serious at the same time. So yeah, I got into Made in Abyss mainly through YouTube and clips, and then I researched on it. And I didn't research everything. I didn't massively spoil myself, aside from Bondrewd. But I finally got around to watching the show. Now, what do I think? I think as the show goes on, it's definitely a slow bake of a show. I think at first, the show's kind of tame. Obviously, there's some underlying dark tones and there's some hints that things might be fucked up. But as the show definitely goes on, especially in season 2, and I would say the show really kicks off on the movie that happens in between season 1 and season 2, the one with Bondrewd, ironically enough. I think that's when stuff actually finally starts getting good, maybe near the end of season 1, but for the most part, season 1, I would count mostly as sort of setup. Now, that's not to say it's not bad. It's just if you go in it with the expectations, it's similar to, I would say, JoJo's, right? JoJo's season 1 and 2 is not bad, but that's before they introduce stands. And obviously, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I'm going to be talking about very light spoilers here. So, obviously, JoJo's 1 and 2, if you take it on its own, they're not bad. When I went into JoJo's knowing nothing about stands, I thought season 1 and 2 were pretty cool. They were pretty grounded. I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And I really like the animation of big buff men. But then once you compare season 3 onward to season 1 and 2, you kind of see like, okay, there wasn't really much going on in 1 and 2 comparatively speaking. So I think going into Made in Abyss is probably the best thing a person can do. Obviously, if you're watching this review, that's kind of out the window already. But if you ever want to convert any of your friends, the best thing to do is to say nothing, which is kind of what I tried to do a little bit as well. But finally, getting into the show itself. What is the show Made in Abyss about, and why do I weirdly count it as one of my favorite type of shows? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's massively fucked up, like I said. But the show is basically about Rico. The main character is Rico. She's I don't want to say an orphan girl, even though she isn't an orphanage, but it's basically about the main character Rico who wants to go into the abyss in this world. Now I don't know if this world takes place on Earth, but basically we're on an island where there's a giant fucking hole that goes down God knows how long into Earth's asshole, and the further down you go, the more fucked up shit happens and the more relics there are. So the main draw of this abyss is basically you could find really cool stuff. And there's other draws too, like, just the spirit of adventure and the spirit of exploration, which for some reason is very ingrained in humans. But basically you go down the abyss for a multitude of reasons. But Rico's reason, and again, light spoilers here, is she wants to find her mother. Her mother, who's a very decorated character in the show, a lot of people know her mother because she's a very big person, is basically near the bottom of what we know of to the abyss because we don't know how deep it actually is. But she's near the bottom, so Rico wants to go find her, and Rico has some other stuff going on where it would make a lot of sense why more than just her mother she would want to go back to the abyss. And one of them is a very fucked up reason. But essentially that's the whole show. It's just them going down a hole. Obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's how you can basically boil it down. They're going down a hole. Now, the whole topic of the show is the further you go down, the more fucked up it gets. Now, the main thing is once you go back up, going down is already enough of an issue where there's like a lot of problems, there's a lot of monsters. The abyss basically becomes like a demon hell zone where you see a lot of weird animals, and I don't even want to call them animals, I want to call them monsters. The further you go down, basically the more into hell you kind of go. Where not only is going down enough of an issue, but if you go up, you're basically hit by the curse of the abyss, which, depending on how far down you've gone, fucks you up even more. Now, I don't want to say much more than that because there's a lot more deep in the series. There's a lot more nuance to it, and there's a lot more details that would take forever to explain. But one of the other things that I think is really nice about the show is there's a lot of details to it. There's a lot of lore. And again, I kind of just touched on that now, where it's like there's a lot of stuff that goes beyond surface level that you would need a lot of explanation for. And it's a show that has a lot of moving parts, especially with the systems in it, like the Curse of the Abyss, the relics themselves. I'm providing very bare level explanations of them, but I think that's one of the star points of the show is there's so much information. Now again, it's nothing crazy. I don't want to over glaze the show. It's nothing crazy like One Piece where, they set up stuff for way beyond in the future, or they have very complicated like power systems and stuff. But especially during season 2, I think the show got very, very deep and complex. Not only with just the story and the whole general universe of Made in Abyss, but also between the characters. The character interactions are some of the best things. Rico's character itself is one of the weirdest characters you've seen in anime, and this is where my friend commented on it too. Where Rico is very weirdly fascinated with the abyss, and to be completely transparent here, Rico is a little fucking girl. Is she very mature for her age? Abso-fucking-lutely. Does it make sense with the world they're in? Absolutely. However, you have to remember, at the end of the day, Rico is like probably like 12 or something, maybe 13. Like she is not like an old girl. She is a young kid. And for her to go down to the abyss, do half the things she does and look at like gore and maiming and killing and death and be the way she is, she's definitely an anomaly. And the show is filled with those things. So obviously there's other characters like Reg, and then later on down the line they get even more characters added to the squad, very similar to One Piece, just not the same. I think the show is an absolute treat. The characters are a treat, the character development is a treat, and again, just the main drawing point of the show is just the tragedy. Like, if you really like fucked up, surprising shit, that's, I think the surprises are really good too. It's fucked up, it's surprising, and you don't expect it, and it makes you sad, and you're like, wow, what the fuck, this is sick. And I think it's very hard for a series to do what Made in Abyss does consistently, which is consistently not only surprise you and be like disgusting with it, but just to see the levels of like fucked up it goes. And I'll give you a prime example. Now again, light spoilers here, but in season 2, there is basically a setting of a village. And in this village, Rico, the further down in the abyss they go, the more time they have to spend like on each level because it's harder to go down. And maybe they have to draw out the series because I heard it's getting pretty close to the manga, but regardless, they spend more time in like the same place the further they go down. In the beginning of the series, they go down very quick. Now, there's a place in season 2 that they get to, and in the places before where you kind of see like fucked up stuff between people, people betraying people, people kind of just dying to the abyss and stuff. This is where you see there's literally like the final couple episodes where you just see gruesome fucking like mass gore, mass maiming, mass just attack of just primal animals on creatures. It's like something out of a nature show. I was like, what the hell is happening? It's so different. Like I feel like the events that happen and the fucked up gore shit that happens in the show is decently different from each time it does happen. Like it has its themes, right? Especially in the movie, there's like the big theme of like betrayal, which is still fucked up. Like everything that happens is fucked up, but it's under the different theme. The second movie is betrayal. The first movie is just like horrendousness of like, okay, it's setting the stage. And then the third movie, or sorry, not the third movie, the second season is just like, oh my god, like we're in fucking no man's land right now. Like we're in nature. This is nature. Like this is fucked up. And there's more than just that. Again, it's really hard to talk about without spoilers, but my god, is this show crazy. And I think it keeps doing it. I'm scared, but weirdly curious to keep going with the show. It's like watching a car crash. It's like every time you look at the highway, there's a different car that's crashed. First, it's like a minivan, then it's a truck, then it's a trailer, and then somehow eventually you find like a whole cruise ship on the highway and you're like, how the fuck did that get there? How did all those people die? But you're weirdly intrigued as well as grossed out. And the show is very, very gross as well. The show is very disgusting. I'm surprised they talk about and show half the shit they do. Now obviously there's not tits and ass flying everywhere, but there's definitely underlying themes of like nudity and sex and slavery and stuff like that, and prostitution even, where I'm just like, wow. Like again, and it's through the lens of Rico. You mainly see it through Rico, which is a kid, and you're like, holy shit, like this is a dark and fucked up world. And I guess the whole beautiful thing is it's very underlying and it's very deep. That's how I would mainly describe Manibus. Now, is it a perfect show? Is there any excuse me, is there any sort of complaints I have about the show? Because I've been glazing it for quite a while now. Off the top of my head, I honestly don't really think so. I mean, again, if I can't really find any complaint to really give, I default to the complaint of it's niche, right? You either like it or you don't. There's not really any complaints I had with the show. I would say, like, the main complaint I have is it doesn't fit more into my personal niches, but from what it showed, I think it's pretty good. Now, maybe the only complaint I have that I could kind of pick out right now is some of the stuff in the show is a little overly complicated, and it does take some explaining to the point where the show kind of doesn't do it well. And again, I'm going to go back to season 2 here, where in season 2, they introduce a lot of like, I don't want to say new systems, but some complicated systems where they trade things for value and stuff like that, and they use like a weird different language, which, you don't need to know a whole different language because it's a made up one. But especially with the system of trading value for things and just how certain things work, I feel like some things could have used a little bit of a better explanation, but then the hard part is how do you fit it in the story? How do you make it organic and stuff like that? Which, again, that's not for us, the fans, to figure out. That's for the author to kind of do better. But who knows? I think that was a little bit of a weak point where at some points it did get a little overly complicated. Some things, again, need a lot of explaining and understanding. Now, this is where it could be done purposefully, where it's like, oh, maybe this isn't explained well because the characters themselves don't know it exactly, and this is where we're seeing it through their lenses. Because there's definitely some information that we have of the Abyss that isn't fully accurate that you learn throughout the show. It's like, okay, we think this, it's actually like this, or oh, we thought this was a hard rule, it's actually not. You could get around it this way. And again, the main thing I keep going back to is there's depth to stuff, but some stuff is overly complicated. And if you don't like fucked up shit, this isn't the show for you. This show sometimes gets very emotional, And again, it looks weird, right? It looks weird looking at the way the show looks and the style of it to say like this is how it is, but it really is. It really subverts expectations. So aside from just it being niche, I think unless you like the genre of fucked up shit, you're not really gonna like the show. I think it's an amazing show. I think it's a show that everyone should watch. It's pretty good. It's not wildly popular or anything, and I don't think it does anything exceptionally well, but it's overall really, really good with the story. Like the story and just seeing the abyss and how different it is from other shows and stuff, I think is really cool. It's this constant mystery that is always there, and it doesn't necessarily get demystified because the deeper you go, the more mystery you get. You might solve some, but you're always left with something new. And again, you're always going to see more fucked up shit. I think the writer is probably like pretty sick in the head, especially with some of the themes he shows in the show. I'm a little scared of his mind, but at the same time, I'm intrigued. I'm scared but intrigued, and I think that's the perfect way to describe this series. Not much really bad about it as long as you like this certain genre. Not much bad I can certainly pick out, except a little overly complicated. But overall, I really, really liked Made in Abyss. I think a lot of people should watch it. If you're not into anime, obviously there's not much helping you with this. You can't really convince someone to watch anime from this. Although I do think people will be surprised when they see it. But either way, if I had to rate this on my scale of 1 to 10, 5 being neutral, I think I would honestly rate this like it's so hard. It's so hard because I'm trying to be fair here because I'm trying to compare it to everything else I've seen and how much I enjoyed it. I'm going to rate it an 8.5 out of 10. I'm gonna rate it 8.5. I really like it. Anything above an 8, I think I really enjoy. I wanted to rate it a 9, but I guess the other negative is again, it just doesn't play enough into my niches. This is where there's other characters they show in the show, and to kind of give some context here, even though it's pretty late into the review already, but one of the other systems in the show is the whistles. So for some reason, and a lot of the stuff in the show we don't even know why it's there or why it occurs because that's how much mystery there is. But in the show, they basically use different levels of whistles to describe characters. So the deeper you go, or the more capable you are, the different color whistle you get. Excuse me. And I don't remember exactly the order of them. I think it's like there's a bell you get or something, or a shell or some shit. But after that, I believe it's like purple and then black and then white. But basically, all you need to know is white is the highest level of whistle. And the white whistles are like, there's only a handful of them because they're really, really rare and they're really, really good. I think the white whistles are some of the most interesting parts of the show. Banju obviously being one of them. Banju's a very sick and fucked up guy who basically values science and advancement above all else. And I think not only Rico in the main cast, but all the other characters, they have a very prime place in the show. This is where all the other characters, even the ones that are surrounding the white whistles, not necessarily like prime main characters, even all those are good. And this is where it kind of goes into a sort of like not only a good thing but also a bad thing where I want to see more of them. Again, this goes into more of my niche where the side characters, excuse me, the side characters are so good that I think it's almost a detriment that they don't show more of them. Obviously, the white whistles are the prime ones, but even the other side characters that are not white whistles, the ones even around them, are still decently interesting, and I would love to see more of them. This is where it's a little bit of a weak point, especially in season one, where they kind of start moving through the areas very quickly. Where when you meet someone, unless there's one specific instance where it happens, which I remember in season one, where they kind of sit somewhere, they blast through the places and they only meet people kind of quickly. And even if you want to see more, like I said before, you can't really go back up the abyss. You can only really go down. So once you see them, that's kind of it, at least through Rico's point of view. Unless they do some side spin off, or the characters somehow come down to us, or we just see them on the side in a side story or anything, we're not really going to see them again. And it's really sad to know that because, again, some of these characters are really, really good. So again, it's a little bit of a detriment and a little bit of a positive that the side characters don't get fleshed out as much as I would want them to. And this is where I definitely do want them to because they're so good. So aside from that, like I said, it's very niche. If you like fucked up shit, you're gonna like it. I think it's an overall great show if you like anime, and it's best to go in with a very open mind. Again, watching this review kind of does spoil a little bit of the surprises. It kind of gears you towards something which I think is the wrong thing to go into with this anime, but This anime definitely for me, the whole mystifying experience, the whole mystery, the whole how gruesome it is, how much of a distance there is between the look and what actually happens. It's very deep and mature anime, and I really really like it. Especially all of Rico's story with Reg and all of her other little companions, all the character interactions. I think just everything in the show for what it does it pretty fucking well. So I'm confidently sticking, and I'm a little sad with my 8.5 rating. I do want to put it up to 9, but again, it just doesn't go far enough into my niches because there is OP characters in the show. The White Whistle's OP characters. It just doesn't go into them enough. I like Rico a lot. I like Rico as a main character, and this is where it doesn't solely focus on her, but my niche is going into the things I like, and it doesn't go enough into the things I like. So it's almost suffering from success. It's not really a detriment, but it is something that hurts that they don't go more into the side characters and everything. So 8.5 out of 10. I forgot what I said is the rating. Bondrudes, I guess. 8.5 out of 10 whistles, white whistles. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you guys want me to review anything else, please let me know. And please watch me at Twitch TV/Technics channel.